nothing wrong.
I'm asking. I'm gonna ask you to step outside.
Why would you want to?
I'm asking you to step out. I just got here.
She said.
Okay, either you're gonna step outside, or I'm gonna place you outside, or I'm gonna place you on arrest for interference.
Go ahead.
Turn around.
No, stop it. No, please.
The front door was already open when Officer Ryan Keller stepped inside the house on Brookline Avenue. He did not knock again. He did not ask for permission. His boots crossed the doorway as his flashlight swept the living room walls. Inside the house stood Marcus Hale, a U.S. attorney, barefoot on his own carpet. Keller raised his voice, ordered Marcus to face the wall, and told him he had no rights at that moment. The officer said the house was now a police scene. Marcus asked why. Keller moved closer, pointed a finger at his chest, and said he could do whatever he wanted. The body camera was on. The camera light blinked. Marcus stood still. Keller told him to kneel. Marcus said he would not kneel in his own home without a reason. Keller answered by calling him a liar and a threat. He told Marcus that power did not matter here. He said titles did not matter here. From the hallway, an older woman's voice called out Marcus's name. Keller turned toward the sound. He ordered silence. He stepped deeper into the house, pushing past a framed photo on the wall. The photo fell and cracked on the floor. Keller reached for his cuffs. That was the moment everything stopped, and the moment everything started. What happened next would not be clear for a long time. Subscribe to stay updated, share to keep others safe, and comment where you're watching from. Earlier that same day, the house on Brookline Avenue was quiet. The street sat in a middle-class area on the east side of Columbus, Ohio. The homes were close together. Most were built in the 1960s. The sidewalks were narrow and uneven. Trees lined the road, and parked cars filled the curbs. Marcus Hale moved into the house 3 years earlier. He worked for the federal government as a U.S. attorney. His job involved cases about fraud, civil rights, and police oversight. He did not talk about his work with neighbors. He left early in the morning and returned late most nights. Across the street lived an older woman named Eleanor Watkins. She was 67 years old. She had lived on Brookline Avenue for over 20 years. She knew which cars belonged on the street and which did not. She watched from her front window most days. She liked quiet routines and clear rules. Eleanor noticed everything. That afternoon, Eleanor saw a police cruiser stop 2 houses down from Marcus's place. The cruiser sat with its engine running. One officer stayed inside for a moment. Then the door opened. Officer Ryan Keller stepped out. He was in his mid-30s. He had worked for the Columbus Police Department for 9 years. He was known on his shift for being strict and confident. Keller looked down the street and then at a small notepad in his hand. He checked an address. He walked toward Marcus's house. At the same time, Marcus was inside, finishing a phone call. He had taken the day off. He planned to cook dinner and review some case files later. He wore jeans and a plain shirt. He did not expect visitors. The knock came once. It was loud. Marcus opened the door. He saw the uniform. He asked how he could help. Keller asked if Marcus was Marcus Hale. Marcus said yes. Keller asked for identification. Marcus asked why. Keller said there had been a report. Marcus asked what kind of report. Keller said it was about suspicious activity. Marcus looked past Keller and saw Eleanor standing on her porch across the street. She was watching. Marcus told Keller he had done nothing wrong. He said he was a federal attorney and asked for the reason for the visit. Keller paused. He looked at Marcus again. He asked Marcus to step outside. Marcus said he preferred to speak inside his doorway. Keller said that was not acceptable. Marcus said the officer could leave unless there was a warrant. Keller's jaw tightened. That was when the tone changed. Keller told Marcus he was being difficult. He said cooperation would make things easier. Marcus said he knew his rights. Keller said rights did not apply if there was a safety concern. Eleanor crossed the street slowly. She stood near the edge of Marcus's yard. She said she could hear raised voices. She asked if everything was okay. Keller turned and told her to go back to her house. He said it was police business. Eleanor stopped but did not leave. She stood still. Marcus asked again why the officer was there. Keller said there had been a call about a man matching Marcus's description, walking around cars at night earlier in the week. Marcus said he had been out of town. Keller said that did not matter. Marcus said he would not step outside. He said the officer could get a warrant if needed. Keller stepped closer to the doorway. Eleanor saw Keller place his foot inside the door frame. Marcus said the officer was not allowed inside. Keller said he was entering to ensure safety. Marcus said there was no emergency. Keller stepped fully inside. That was the first extreme event of the day, though no one called it that yet. Inside the house, Keller looked around. He asked if anyone else was present. Marcus said no. Keller asked again. Marcus repeated his answer. Keller said he did not believe him. Eleanor followed to the porch steps. She called Marcus's name again. She said she would call someone if this did not stop. Keller raised his voice. He told Marcus to tell the woman to leave. Marcus said she was free to stand on the sidewalk. Keller said he was in charge now. The situation did not calm. Tightened. Keller radioed in. He spoke fast. He said he was on scene with a non-compliant subject. He said the subject refused commands. He did not say the subject was a federal attorney. Marcus moved toward the kitchen to grab his phone. Keller blocked his path. He told Marcus to keep his hands visible. Marcus asked if he was being detained. Keller did not answer. The house felt smaller. The hallway narrowed. The lights stayed on. Eleanor stepped inside the doorway. She said she wanted to know what was happening. Keller told her to leave immediately. He said she was interfering. Marcus told Keller to calm down. He said everyone could step outside and talk. Keller said no one was stepping anywhere until he said so. This was a low point in the day, a stretch where nothing dramatic happened, but everything was set. Keller walked through the living room. He opened a door to a bedroom. He opened a closet. He said he was checking for threats. Marcus said this was illegal. Keller said it was a safety sweep. Eleanor stood near the door. She watched. She remembered later that the officer did not look scared. He looked certain. Keller returned to the living room. He told Marcus to sit on the couch. Marcus said he would stand. Keller said that was a command. Marcus asked again if he was being detained. Keller said he would be if he did not comply. Marcus sat. Keller stood over him. He asked Marcus why he was being so defensive. Marcus said he was protecting his home. Keller said that attitude was suspicious. Outside, a second cruiser drove past but did not stop. The street stayed quiet. Eleanor said she would call a lawyer. Keller told her not to. He said it would make things worse. Marcus told Keller to leave. Keller said he was not leaving. He said he had authority. The conversation went in circles. Time passed. 10 minutes. Then 15. This was another low stretch, but it carried weight. Then Keller's radio crackled. A dispatcher asked for an update. Keller stepped away slightly. He spoke quietly. He said the subject was uncooperative and possibly hiding something. Marcus stood up. He said he would record. Keller turned fast. He told Marcus to sit back down. Marcus did not. Keller reached for his cuffs. Eleanor said, "Stop." Keller told her to get out. He said this was her last warning. Marcus said he was ending this. He said he would call the U.S. Attorney's office. Keller laughed once. He said that would not help. Keller moved closer. He told Marcus to put his hands behind his back. Marcus said no. He said there was no lawful reason. Keller raised his voice. He said refusal would lead to force. This was the next extreme event building. Eleanor stepped forward. She said she would not allow this. Keller told her to move. She did not. Keller turned away from Marcus and toward Eleanor. He pointed at the door. He said, "Leave now." Eleanor said she was not breaking the law. Marcus took a step toward them. Keller swung back. He told Marcus to freeze. The room locked into place. 3 people. No space. Keller grabbed Marcus's arm. Marcus pulled back. Keller said Marcus was resisting. Marcus said he was not under arrest. The body camera light blinked again. Keller forced Marcus toward the wall. He said, "Face the wall." Marcus said, "No." Keller said, "Now." Eleanor shouted Marcus's name. That brought the moment back to where it began. Keller inside the house. Marcus against his own wall. The officer claiming full control. The cuffs came out. And that is where Chapter 1 ends, with the officer closing the distance, the neighbor still inside the doorway, and the law about to be tested in a way no one on Brookline Avenue expected. Keller pushed Marcus against the wall and pulled his arms back. Marcus did not strike, kick, or shout. He stayed upright and asked one more time if he was under arrest. Keller did not answer. He tightened the grip and repeated the command to face the wall. The metal cuffs clicked once but did not close. Keller adjusted his stance. Eleanor stepped backward toward the door. She said she would stand outside. Keller told her to stay where she was. He said he needed a witness. He did not explain why. Marcus said the officer was breaking the law. Keller said the law allowed him to control the scene. He said the house was now part of an investigation. Keller finished closing one cuff on Marcus's wrist. The second cuff stayed loose. Marcus turned his head and said he would not resist. Keller told him to stop talking. At that moment, Keller's radio sounded again. The dispatcher asked if backup was needed. Keller said no. He said he had the situation under control. Marcus stood still. Eleanor watched. The clock on the wall ticked. This was the continuation of the extreme event, but it slowed. Keller loosened his grip slightly. He moved Marcus a step away from the wall and guided him toward the couch. He told Marcus to sit. Marcus sat. The cuff stayed on one wrist only. Keller stood in front of him and asked questions. He asked where Marcus had been on Tuesday night. Marcus said he was in Chicago for work. Keller asked for proof. Marcus said he could show travel records. Keller said that could wait. Eleanor stood near the doorframe. She said she wanted to understand why this was happening. Keller told her again to be quiet. He said talking could interfere. The room stayed calm on the surface. This was a low stretch. Keller walked around the living room. He looked at shelves and cabinets without opening them. He said he was documenting the space. Marcus asked if he could remove the cuff. Keller said no. He said the cuff was for safety. Eleanor asked if she could call someone. Keller said no calls were allowed right now. He did not explain the rule. Keller returned to Marcus and asked about his job. Marcus said he worked for the Department of Justice. Keller paused. He asked Marcus to repeat that. Marcus repeated it. Keller said he did not believe him. Marcus asked Keller to check his wallet. Keller said he would check later. He said people lied about titles all the time. This was another low moment, but it carried weight. Outside, a neighbor walked a dog past the house. The neighbor slowed down and looked. Eleanor opened the door slightly. Keller told her to close it. She did. Keller finally asked for identification. Marcus pointed with his free hand to his jacket on a chair. Keller walked over and removed a leather wallet. He opened it. He looked at the ID card inside. He stared at it for several seconds. The card said United States Attorney. Keller did not react right away. He closed the wallet and placed it on the table. He did not remove the cuff. He said nothing about the title. He asked Marcus why he had not said this earlier. Marcus said he had. Keller said he did not remember that. The room stayed quiet. This should have ended the problem. It did not. Keller said that federal jobs did not give special treatment. He said rules were rules. Marcus said he agreed. He said the rules also limited police power. Keller said that was not for Marcus to decide. Eleanor said this did not look right. Keller told her to stop interfering. He said she could be detained next. Marcus asked Keller to leave. Keller said he would leave when he was done. He said he needed to finish his report. The situation moved into another low phase. Keller uncuffed Marcus's wrist but did not apologize. He told Marcus to stay seated. Marcus stayed seated. Keller asked Eleanor to step outside now. She did. She stood on the porch. Keller followed her to the door and closed it. He stayed inside with Marcus. Keller said he would issue a warning for suspicious activity. Marcus said there was no basis. Keller said warnings did not need proof. Keller filled out paperwork on a small pad. He asked for Marcus's date of birth. Marcus gave it. He asked for phone number. Marcus gave it. Minutes passed. This was the calm before the next change. Keller's radio sounded again. Another officer asked if everything was okay. Keller said yes. He said the call was almost done. Marcus stood up slowly. He said he would escort the officer out. Keller told him to sit back down. Marcus said he was not being detained. Keller said he was not free to move yet. Marcus said that was unlawful. Keller said arguing was not helping. Keller stepped closer again. He told Marcus to put his hands on the table. Marcus did not. He stood still. Eleanor knocked lightly on the door from outside. She asked if it was over. Keller shouted for her to stay outside. Marcus said the officer was abusing authority. Keller said accusations would be noted. He said making accusations could lead to consequences. This was the build-up to the next extreme event. Keller raised his voice. He told Marcus he was now being detained for obstruction. Marcus said there was no obstruction. Keller reached for his cuffs again. Marcus took one step back. He did not run. He did not touch the officer. Keller said that step was resistance. Keller grabbed Marcus's arm again. The grip was tighter this time. He pushed Marcus toward the kitchen counter. A glass fell and broke. Eleanor heard the sound from outside. She shouted Marcus's name. Keller said, "Stop resisting," even though Marcus was not striking him. He forced Marcus down against the counter and tried to cuff him again. This was the new extreme event closing the chapter. The body camera stayed on. The radio crackled. The front door shook as Eleanor tried to come back inside. And inside the house, the officer doubled down, turning a routine visit into something far more serious, with consequences that had not yet begun to unfold. Keller forced Marcus forward until his hands pressed against the kitchen counter. The broken glass lay near the sink. Marcus stayed still. He did not swing or shove. He repeated that he was not resisting. Keller did not respond to the words. He pulled Marcus's arms back again and closed the cuffs tight this time. Eleanor pushed the door open and stepped inside. She saw Marcus bent forward and cuffed. She said this had gone too far. Keller ordered her to step back. He said she was now part of the problem. Keller guided Marcus toward the living room. He pushed him down onto the couch. Marcus sat. Keller stood over him. He said Marcus was being detained for obstruction and disorderly conduct. Marcus asked for the legal basis. Keller said it would be explained later. This was the continuation of the extreme event. Keller radioed for backup. He said he had a subject in custody. He did not say the subject was calm. He did not say the subject was a federal attorney. Eleanor stood near the door again. She said she would call 911 to report what she was seeing. Keller told her not to touch her phone. She touched it anyway. Keller turned toward her and said she could be arrested too. Eleanor stopped but kept the phone in her hand. Marcus said the officer needed to stop. He said everything was being recorded. Keller said recordings could be misunderstood. After several minutes, the tension dropped slightly. This was a low stretch. Keller stepped away from Marcus and walked toward the window. He looked outside. He saw a second cruiser pulling up. He adjusted his uniform. He spoke quietly into his radio. 2 officers entered the house. One was Officer Daniel Price. The other was Officer Laura Simmons. They looked at Marcus on the couch in cuffs. They looked at Eleanor near the door. Price asked Keller what happened. Keller said Marcus refused commands and became aggressive. Marcus said that was not true. Simmons asked if there were injuries. Keller said no. Price asked Marcus for his name. Marcus gave it. Price asked his job. Marcus said he was a U.S. attorney. Price paused. He looked at Keller. Keller said titles did not matter. Simmons asked to see identification. Keller said he already checked it. Simmons asked to see it again. Keller handed over the wallet. Simmons opened it. She read the card. She looked at Keller again. This was a quiet moment. Simmons asked Keller to step aside. Keller did. They spoke near the kitchen in low voices. Marcus could not hear everything, but he heard his job title repeated. He heard the word house. He heard the word warrant. Eleanor watched from the doorway. After a short time, Simmons returned to Marcus. She asked if he needed medical help. Marcus said no. She asked if he understood why he was detained. Marcus said no. She nodded and stepped back. Price told Keller they needed to slow down. Keller said he was in control. Price said they needed to clarify the situation. Keller said clarification could happen later at the station. This was another low stretch, but it was unstable. Keller told Marcus he was being transported for questioning. Marcus said that was unlawful. Keller said courts would decide that. Keller stood Marcus up and guided him toward the door. Eleanor blocked the doorway. She said Marcus had done nothing wrong. Keller told her to move. She did not. Price gently moved her aside. Marcus was walked out of his house in cuffs. Neighbors had gathered on the sidewalk. Phones were raised. No one spoke loudly. Marcus was placed in the back of the cruiser. The door closed. This was a major event, but not the end. At the station, Marcus was placed in a holding room. The cuffs were removed. Keller stood nearby. He filled out paperwork. He listed charges. He wrote short descriptions. Marcus asked for a lawyer. Keller said one would be provided later. Marcus asked to call his office. Keller said calls could wait. Time passed. This was a low period. An hour later, a supervisor arrived. His name was Lieutenant Andrew Collins. He asked to review the report. Keller handed it over. Collins read silently. Collins asked where the warrant was. Keller said there was no warrant. Collins asked why the officer entered the home. Keller said exigent circumstances. Collins asked what the emergency was. Keller said possible danger. Collins asked if anything dangerous was found. Keller said no. Collins looked at the body camera footage. He watched without comment. The room stayed quiet. This was still low, but pressure built. Collins asked Keller to step outside. Keller did. The door closed. Marcus sat alone for several minutes. He was later released without charges that night. No explanation was given to him. He returned home quietly. Eleanor was waiting. She asked if he was okay. He said yes. The days that followed were quiet on the surface. This was the longest low stretch. Marcus returned to work. He did not speak publicly about the incident. He requested copies of the footage through official channels. He filed internal complaints. Eleanor gave a written statement. Other officers submitted reports. Weeks passed. An internal review began. Keller continued working. He was not suspended. He told co-workers the incident was routine. Then the review changed direction. Federal investigators requested the footage. They requested dispatch logs. They requested Keller's past reports. They requested training records. This shift marked the build-up to a new extreme event. Keller was called in for an interview. He answered questions. He said he followed procedure. Investigators asked about the entry into the house. Keller said it was justified. They asked about the cuffs. Keller said Marcus resisted. Investigators compared statements. They compared timestamps. They compared radio calls to video. Months later, Keller was informed he was under criminal investigation. He was placed on leave. This was the new extreme event ending the chapter. The officer who once claimed full control now faced a process he could not command, and the case moved forward into a phase that would decide his future. The investigation moved forward without public noise. Federal agents reviewed every part of the incident. They reviewed the body camera footage frame by frame. They reviewed radio calls, timestamps, and written reports. They compared what Keller said on scene with what he wrote later. They compared those statements with what the other officers reported. The differences were clear. Keller had written that Marcus rushed him. The video showed Marcus standing still. Keller had written that Eleanor interfered physically. The video showed her standing near the door. Keller had written that he feared for his safety. The video showed no weapon, no threat, and no emergency. The entry into the house had no legal basis. The detention had no legal basis. The use of force had no legal basis. Federal prosecutors took over the case. Marcus did not lead the prosecution. He stepped away completely. Another office handled it to avoid conflict. A grand jury reviewed the evidence. Witnesses testified. Eleanor spoke in clear terms. She explained what she saw, what she heard, and when it happened. Officers Price and Simmons testified. They explained what they observed when they arrived and what they questioned afterward. The grand jury returned an indictment. Ryan Keller was charged with multiple federal crimes. The charges included deprivation of rights under color of law, false statements, and unlawful entry. Each charge was tied to specific moments shown on video. Keller turned himself in. He was processed like any other defendant. He was released on bond. He entered a plea of not guilty. The case moved to trial. The courtroom stayed calm throughout. The judge enforced clear rules. The jury listened. Lawyers spoke in plain language. Screens showed video clips. Each clip was played more than once. The prosecution showed how Keller entered the house without a warrant. They showed how commands were given without legal cause. They showed how force was used without resistance. They showed how reports were altered afterward. The defense argued that Keller believed he was acting within policy. They argued that fast decisions were required. They argued that mistakes were not crimes. The jury listened to both sides. Marcus testified briefly. He described the timeline without adding opinion. He stated facts only. Eleanor testified again. She repeated her account. Officers Price and Simmons testified again. Experts testified about police procedure. They explained when entry is allowed and when it is not. They explained when detention is legal and when it is not. They explained the duty to stop once no threat exists. The trial lasted several weeks. After closing arguments, the jury deliberated. They reviewed the evidence carefully. They returned a verdict. Ryan Keller was found guilty on all major counts. The conviction matched the facts. Sentencing took place months later. The judge reviewed guidelines. The judge reviewed impact statements. The judge reviewed Keller's history. The judge noted that the abuse of authority occurred inside a private home and targeted a person exercising lawful rights. The judge noted that the conduct was not brief or accidental. It continued despite warnings, despite evidence, and despite the presence of witnesses. The sentence was announced clearly. Ryan Keller was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. The courtroom stayed quiet. Keller was taken into custody immediately. After sentencing, the case closed. Appeals were filed but later denied. The conviction stood. Marcus returned to his work. He did not seek attention. He continued handling cases involving public trust. He worked on policy reviews related to law enforcement training and oversight. He spoke in professional settings about the importance of clear limits and accountability. Eleanor remained on Brookline Avenue. She returned to her routines. She still watched the street from her window. She spoke to local groups about paying attention and speaking up when something looks wrong. The police department changed its training materials. New guidance emphasized consent, warrants, and de-escalation. Supervisors reviewed body camera footage more closely. Entry into homes required clearer documentation. The story spread quietly through legal circles. It became a case study. It was used to show how power must be checked and how rules protect everyone. The message was simple. Authority must follow the law. Homes must be respected. Witnesses matter. Calm actions prevent harm. Kindness and restraint reduce conflict. On Brookline Avenue, the house stayed the same. The door was repaired. The frame was repainted. Life continued at a steady pace. What began as a routine visit ended as a reminder. Actions have consequences. Choices matter. Accountability applies to everyone. And that is where the case ends.